Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive, not into a location or an event, but into an archetype and a monster. Specifically, the Lich and its corresponding archetype. Before I expand on the information we have discovered from Geb's writing, I'll go over the information we already know. Many who venture into necromancy do so with the path leading ultimately to becoming a Lich. It doesn't matter if they venture down this dark path for power, revenge, or a lost love. Eventually, eternal life will be the final goal. Even if the caster accomplishes his noble goals, he brings his lost love back to life. The next step after going so deep into the black will be to make sure it lasts forever. At that point, the extra steps to lichdom seem like so much less of a hurdle than it would be for the commoner. No soul is able to survive transforming itself into the undead, but becoming a lich deserves intense thought. It isn't just an act of self-harm like raising the dead or commanding the fallen. It is such an act of sheer ego that it goes against the very instincts of self-preservation. While raising the dead may corrupt the soul, the process of becoming a lich traps the soul away from the body within a phylactery or a soul cage. Once the ritual is complete, the body and soul are forced into a suspended state, tied together but never being allowed to return to each other without the help of random adventurers at best. This contradiction is what gives the Lich their power. The ritual is little more than a way to focus and prepare the soul to be torn away from the body, mind, and life itself. It is thought that each ritual is unique, due to the ritual needing to attune to each person's unique body and spirit, but I'm not sure that that's the case. I believe that the ritual is unique due to one's own belief in themselves. Such a ritual would need to be unique, because every lich would believe they are the strongest lich to ever exist, and no one else's ritual will ever be good enough to work for them. There does appear to be an interesting connection between those seeking lichdom and those with an overinflated sense of their own power. Does the act of becoming a lich cause such an ego, or does lichdom itself only call to those who have an inflated ego already? With that brief summary, let's take a look at a few of the famous liches from Golarian's history to get an idea of the kind of character you would be following behind. The first, and most famous, would be Tar-Baphon. Tar-Baphon is a powerful lich who is still around and active, with an attempted invasion of Absalom just a few years ago. Tar-Baphon is a lich who so far has no rivals in power, due to the circumstances of his rising to lichdom. It is believed that he used parts of the dragon Istravik and Naraga in his path to lichdom, and even furthered how powerful he would one day become when he provoked Aridin into a fight. Of course the god won, but by killing Tar-Baphon he would grant the lich the most powerful death that a lich had ever achieved. It would take nearly 2,300 years for Tar-Baphon to return to life, but he returned immensely powerful. His return directly leads into the next lich we will touch upon today, Arazni. Formerly a herald to Aridin, Arazni stepped forward when Tar-Baphon returned, and attempted to put an end to his reign, but was ultimately defeated by the lich. Her body was used to demoralize her allies, as it was thrown at their feet by Tar-Baphon. However, Geb had her body stolen, and he raised her as a lich in turn, forcing her to rule his kingdom by keeping her soul cage as ransom. However, she has managed to engineer her escape and vanished to an unknown destination. It's unclear if she was able to recover her soul cage, or if Geb still has it. Now that we've touched on liches from Golarian's past, let's discuss how to create liches for the future. First edition simply says that the path to becoming a lich is difficult and lengthy, with intense amounts of research, money, and time going into the process of crafting a soul cage. The bestiary says that it should take, and I quote, hundreds of thousands of gold pieces, numerous deadly adventures, and a large number of difficult skill checks over the course of months, years, or even decades. To finalize the transformation into a Lich, the character must create a soul jar, which requires a spellcaster level of 11th or higher and ultimately 120,000 gold worth of ingredients. Other than these two set conditions, the path to Lichdom is up to each game master to decide. Luckily, the Book of the Dead gives us a little bit more information, but it is still left ultimately up to the game master to set the specifics. The ritual to become a Lich requires at least a 6th level spell slot, but is forcibly heightened to whatever the highest spell level the caster has achieved. The caster must perform a skill check tied to their primary caster tradition, with Arcana rolling for Arcana casters, Nature for Primal, Occult for Occult, and Religion for Divine, and must be at least Master in this skill. Before starting the ritual, the caster must personally construct a soul cage, which costs a minimum of 100 gold per level, meaning at least 1,100 gold, and a hard DC for the crafting check, and can only be attempted by those who are expert in crafting. This is just the basic requirements, but the crafting of a soul cage should require 3 further unique requirements. The first is a significant sacrifice to the life and experiences of the primary caster. For example, think of Thanos sacrificing Gamora, or perhaps a character will sacrifice memories they are especially fond of, rendering them unable to remember some of the happiest or most important points from their own lives. The second is a source of great power that relates to the caster's tradition, which will be consumed during the ritual. Perhaps a powerful magical artifact, or in the case of primal magic, perhaps it's a cutoff from the oldest tree in the most ancient of forests. I personally feel that at the very least, a minor artifact should be required for this position, but it is up to your GM, so check with them. The third is a poignant means to end the caster's life, which will be consumed or performed in the last few seconds of the ritual. This could be a poison that the caster has adventured far and wide to gather, a magical blade, or any other tool the caster wishes that is important or appropriate to them. Now, this isn't to say that these are the only requirements. You are performing a spell that will make your character more or less immortal, so it should be difficult. This is almost akin to becoming a god, and you should have to work for it. But speak to your GM and find out if the story will even support such a character path before you decide upon it, because I personally have run a few games where this kind of story would be a rather poor fit. So now that we've discussed how to become a Lich, let's see what you gain as a Lich. With the Lich dedication, you gain the undead trait and basic undead benefits. The basic undead benefits are pretty powerful just by themselves, which makes sense when you take into account the rare status of undead players. As an undead, you gain immediate access to the Necral language. You gain undead vision, which is low light vision or dark vision if you previously had low light vision. You gain negative healing, which means you are damaged by positive damage, such as healing spells, and healed by negative damage, such as harm. You gain negative survival, which means when reduced to 0 HP, you are knocked unconscious and begin dying, instead of being outright destroyed like most undead. Many methods of bringing someone back from the verge of death does not work on you, such as the spell Stabilize. You become outright immune to death effects. This will keep you from being automatically killed or having your dying value increased, but you are not immune to the other parts of the spell or effect. For example, you would still take mental damage and become frightened by Phantasmal Killer, but you would not die instantly. You gain a +1 to saving throws against all disease and poisons. While you no longer eat or drink the same food as humanoids do, you do have a hunger related to your status. In a Lich's case, you hunger for knowledge, and you must always be seeking out new forms of knowledge. As with many archetypes, you do become locked into the Lich path until you take at least 2 more feats from this path. At 12th level, you gain the ability to craft your soul cage, which is needed to take the dedication in the first place. When you're destroyed, your soul flees to the soul cage and rebuilds over the next 1d10 days. Afterwards, you manifest next to your soul cage, fully healed and in a new body, lacking any equipment you had on you at death. You get to choose the form your soul cage takes when you first craft it. A few options include a miniature cage, a ring, an amulet, or a crown. Your GM should be willing to work with you to adjust the usage and bulk as needed, but a soul cage is rarely more than a light bulk. The soul cage has a hardness of 9 and 36 HP. If your soul cage is destroyed but your body isn't, you can attempt to locate your soul and trap it again, building a new soul cage. This is no trivial feat and often will take an entire adventure to accomplish. If you fail, you suffer from a long decline that we will explain later on in this video. There is an alternative way to handle Lich resurrections that I feel should be mentioned here. With an NPC Lich, the players sneaking in and destroying the soul cage is a classic adventure. However, it would come across poorly to have an enemy or enemy team sneak in and destroy a player's soul cage off screen. Since this is a delicate issue where a GM risks offending a player by removing the ability for them to defend their character that they have worked so hard for, the book has offered an alternative to soul cage resurrections. The book suggests that the Lich Archetype may not be suitable, even when played alongside other undead archetypes, but a way to keep that Lich flavor without granting a player immortality is by having the soul cage instead act as a rejuvenation token, a new item from this book, which requires a ritual to awaken the soul within the cage. This, in my opinion, balances without completely removing the immortal nature of the Lich, requiring at least a portion of your player group to survive for that player to be resurrected. At level 14, you can choose between 3 feats: the Drain Soul Cage ability, Enshroud Soul Cage ability, and the Hand of the Lich ability. The Drain Soul Cage ability requires you to have the Drain bonded item and a spellbook, so naturally, wizards get this feat. I am not sure if there's a way for other classes to get spellbooks or the Drain bonded spell, so I'm not honestly sure if other classes can take this one. This allows you to make your soul cage into your bonded item, allowing you to drain the cage to cast one spell from your spellbook, even if you have not prepared it for that day. If your soul cage is damaged or broken, you cannot use Drain Soul Cage. The Enshroud Soul Cage has no additional requirements, and is shrouded in illusions and gains the effect of magic aura and non-detection spells. This allows your cage to appear as a random nondescript object with an unlimited duration. The spells are heightened to half your level rounded up, and your spell DC is used against any attempt to counteract them. You are also mentally alerted whenever your soul cage is damaged. Hand of the Lich has no additional requirements, and it grants you the advanced undead benefits, as well as increases your unarmed damage. The advanced undead benefits gives you dark vision, greater disease and poison protection, and paralysis and sleep protection. Your disease and poison saves increase to +2, while your poison resistance equals half your level. Paralysis and sleep protection grants you +1 against effects that would paralyze or force you to sleep. On top of these benefits, your unarmed strike increases to 1d6, deals negative damage instead of bludgeoning, and loses the non-lethal trait, as well as gaining the magical trait. When you critically hit a living creature with your fist strike, the creature becomes slowed 1 until the end of your next turn, unless it succeeds at a fortitude save against your spell DC. At 16th level, you have 2 additional feats to choose from. You can now choose between Bolster Soul Cage or Spell Gem. If you are legendary in crafting, Bolster Soul Cage allows you to reinforce your soul cage, making its hardness equal to your level, with a health of 4 times your level. The time it takes your soul cage to rebuild your body is reduced to 1d6 days. At 20th level, it is reduced again until your soul cage only takes 2d12 plus 12 hours to rebuild. If you are legendary in crafting, Spell Gem allows you to embed a gemstone into your forehead and hold one of the following spells: repulsion, scrying, or true seeing. Once per day, you may drain the gem's energy to cast your chosen spell without using a spell slot. You must choose which spell is embedded when taking this feat, but you can spend 1 week to change what spell is embedded. At 18th level, you can heighten the cast spell to 7th level. At 20th level, you can heighten the spell to 8th level, and can additionally drain the energy from the gem to cast an 8th level spell turning spell. And lastly, at level 18, we have the Frightful Aura feat. You need to be a master in intimidation for this feat. At level 18, you surround yourself by a sense of menace and power that leaves a physical feeling. The aura is a 15-foot emanation from your position, and any enemy that enters or ends its turn within this aura must attempt a will save against either your spell DC or class DC, whichever is higher. If the creature succeeds their save, they are unaffected and immune for 1 minute. If they fail, they become frightened 1, and if they critically fail, they become frightened 2. So now that we understand what it's like to live as a Lich, what happens if the soul cage is destroyed? After a Lich loses their soul cage, they sink into a nearly endless torpor, their minds wandering infinitely as they search for a solution to their freed soul, but without the drive to recapture it. Their bodies eventually crumble away, leaving only a weathered skull inhabited by a feral evil. The lust for power remains, while all reasoning and intelligence fades. This necromantic blight draws out nearby magic, consuming it to fuel their continued existence. From symbol baubles to powerful artifacts, all can be consumed by this newly formed demi-lich. I cannot fathom an existence worse, to have the unfathomable power at the tip of your fingers, only to lose it all and be reduced to a mindless monster. No wonder liches would prefer destruction over existing past the loss of their souls. And that's our video on liches. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope I'll see you next time.